Let's look at two brothers, twin boys who grew up in the exact same house and graduated from the same university. On the very same Monday morning, they started their careers at the exact same corporate firm. Both earned an identical entry-level salary of $55,000. The first brother, let's call him Alex, did what everyone tells you to do when you get your first real paycheck. He celebrated. He upgraded his car to a reliable but shiny new sedan. He moved into a solo apartment because he felt he had earned his independence. Alex figured he had plenty of time to build wealth. He told himself he would start investing seriously in his 30s, once his income grew and he could actually afford it. The second brother, Ben, took a completely counterintuitive path. He chose to start before he was ready, ignoring the urge to signal his new status. Ben kept driving his beat-up college hatchback. He took on a roommate to split the rent. Every single month, without fail, he quietly funneled $500 into a basic index fund. They only lived this way for exactly 5 years. By year 6, their paths flipped. Ben stopped investing entirely. He needed his cash for other life milestones, so he never added another dollar to that account for the next 35 years. Alex, suddenly panicking about his future, started aggressively investing that same $500 every single month, keeping it up for the rest of his career. When they finally hit age 65, the divergence between them was absolutely staggering. One brother sat on a massive, stress-free fortune, while the other faced a deeply compromised, anxious retirement. The entire financial trajectory of their next 40 years was completely decided in their very first 5 years of work. If you want to understand the hidden rules of how money and career games are actually played, hit subscribe and join us here at Begin Success. I don't share hype, and I don't give textbook advice. We just look at the cold, hard math and the psychology behind what actually builds a secure life, so you can stop playing defense and start building real wealth on your own terms. Most people look at a story like Alex and Ben and assume it's just a trick of compound interest. They figure the math is the only thing doing the heavy lifting. But the reality is much deeper than a basic spreadsheet formula. Your first 5 years in the workforce hold an almost terrifying amount of power because of 3 distinct, converging forces that collide during this exact window. If you understand them, you can weaponize them. If you ignore them, you spend the next 40 years fighting a losing battle. The first force is the compound runway. In your early 20s, you possess a unique asset that no amount of money can buy later in life: pure, unadulterated time. Every single dollar invested during this 5-year window has a potential compounding lifespan of 40 years before retirement. At a historically normal market return, a single dollar invested in year 1 multiplies roughly 28 times over by the time you stop working. If you wait just 10 years to start, that same dollar only multiplies about 14 times. You are essentially cutting your money's ultimate power directly in half. It is a mathematical lever that you only get to pull once. The second force is lifestyle baseline lock-in. This is entirely psychological. When you transition from a broke student to a salaried professional, your brain undergoes a massive identity shift. If you immediately escalate your spending to match your new income, buying the better car, upgrading to the luxury apartment, you set an incredibly high financial baseline. Your brain quickly normalizes this new standard of living. Suddenly, spending less feels like severe deprivation rather than a conscious, strategic choice. By keeping your baseline intentionally low for just the first 5 years, you prevent the lifestyle creep that permanently traps even the highest corporate earners. The third force is the core skill transfer trap. In your first 5 years, you are paid primarily for your raw execution and your output. It's very easy to fall into the trap of salary chasing, moving rapidly from job to job just to secure a marginal 10% raise to fund a temporary lifestyle upgrade. But you are trading your long-term leverage for short-term consumption. The real wealth-building objective of these initial 5 years isn't maximizing your cash flow to signal status, it is mastering the foundational technical and psychological skills that make your personal leverage exponential later in life. When these 3 forces converge, they create a massive trajectory split. You are either intentionally building a low-friction financial engine, or you are quietly anchoring yourself to a high-cost existence. To understand how ruthlessly the math punishes hesitation, let's run 3 distinct scenarios side by side. We will look at 3 people, all starting their careers at age 25 and planning to step away at age 65. The math is based on a standard, historically normal market return of 8%. The differences between them aren't small, the final gap is absolutely jaw-dropping. The first scenario is what I call the aggressive run. This is the Ben path from our opening story. At 25, he starts putting away $500 every single month, but he only does it for exactly 5 years. By age 30, he stops completely and leaves his total contribution of $30,000 to sit untouched for 35 more years. Because he gave his money maximum runway, his final retirement balance swells to a staggering $623,740. The second scenario is the moderate run. This person feels too behind or overwhelmed to match Ben early on, but they start with a messy, imperfect consistency. They save just half of that amount, $250 a month, but they maintain it steadily for the entire 40-year duration of their career. They put in a total of $120,000 of their own hard-earned cash. Their ultimate outcome? $778,800. They build a solid, comfortable nest egg, but it required 40 long years of continuous discipline to achieve. The third scenario is the delay and catch-up run. This is the conventional trap. This person decides they have plenty of time, spending their first 5 years upgrading their lifestyle instead of investing. At age 30, realizing they missed the boat, they panic invest $500 a month. They do this aggressively for 35 straight years, contributing a massive total of $210 out of pocket, 7 times more cash than Ben invested. Yet, because they surrendered those crucial first 5 years, their final balance stops at $580,800. By waiting just 60 months, they spent an extra $180,000 of their own money, only to end up $43,000 poorer than the person who quit after year 5. The math is brutal, and it doesn't care about your good intentions. You cannot out-earn a late start. When you are in your first 5 years of work, you aren't just making daily spending choices. You are establishing a structural architecture for your life. There are 5 specific decision categories in this window that carry an invisible, compounding price tag. Every time you choose convenience or status over margin, you are signing a contract that charges your future self a fortune. The first category is housing. This is almost always your largest fixed leak. The standard advice tells you to buy as much house as you qualify for, or rent a luxury solo apartment because you earned it. But choosing a premium space over a modest, shared apartment in your early 20s easily costs you $800 a month in raw cash. Over 5 years, that single preference strips $48,000 directly out of your hands, money that could have compounded into over $1.3 million by retirement. The second category is vehicles. This is where young professionals hemorrhage wealth just to look stable. Buying a $40,000 financed sedan with a $600 monthly payment, rather than driving an uncool $10,000 used hatchback, seems normal. Everyone does it. But that car payment, combined with premium insurance and depreciation, drains an estimated $70,000 from your net worth during your most critical compounding window. The third category is lifestyle expansion. This isn't about buying coffee, it's about shifting your identity. It's upgrading your gym membership, your grocery store, and your electronics simply because your income went up. Normalizing a high-consumption lifestyle early creates a psychological floor that is brutal to reverse. The ongoing cost to your retirement wealth is easily $150,000. The fourth category is career path selection. Chasing a slightly higher immediate salary at a dead-end company, instead of taking a lower-paying role with exponential skill transfer upside, is a massive mistake. You are trading long-term leverage for short-term consumption. The fifth category is the plan delusion. This is waiting for the perfect financial advisor, the perfect budget blueprint, or the perfect market conditions before investing a single dollar. The cost of this hesitation is pure friction. Waiting 5 years for a perfect plan instead of starting with a messy, imperfect index fund investment costs you hundreds of thousands of dollars in pure opportunity cost. You are paying for these choices. The only question is whether you are paying for real freedom or temporary status. Let's step away from theoretical models and look at how this plays out in the real world over a generation. Consider two young couples, the Millers and the Taylors. Both couples started out in the exact same city, earning an identical combined household income of $90,000 a year. They had the same education, the same baseline intelligence, and zero family wealth inheritance. The Millers chose to follow the conventional playbook. The moment their first promotions hit, they moved into a beautifully finished suburban home with a hefty monthly mortgage. To match the neighborhood standard, they parked two financed SUVs in the driveway, paying a combined $1,200 a month to lenders. They prioritized visible status, sending their kids to premium private preschools and taking annual resort vacations on credit cards, always telling themselves they would catch up on savings later when their income peaked. The Taylors made a completely different, highly contrarian series of choices. They chose to live below their means before they felt psychologically ready. They ignored the suburban peer pressure and stayed in a modest, unglamorous duplex for their first 5 years. They drove two older, high-mileage sedans that were completely paid off. Instead of funding visible status symbols, they automated a strict habits system. $1,500 went directly into low-cost index funds on the first day of every single month. Trace their choices over just that initial 5-year window. The Taylors built an aggressive $90,000 principal foundation that they simply left to compound in the background. Even when they later eased off the gas to upgrade their lifestyle moderately, that early foundation kept working silently. By the time both couples hit their late 50s, the outcome gap was brutal. The Millers were deeply trapped on a high-cost lifestyle treadmill, earning good money but utterly paralyzed by debt, unable to stop working. The Taylors, sitting on a completely passive portfolio worth over $1.2 million from that early engine, possessed total career autonomy. Same income, same starting line. One couple optimized for lifestyle containment, while the other spent 40 years paying for a lifetime of manufactured status. Here's what I find most striking about the Millers and the Taylors, and it is a reality that standard financial planning completely fails to mention. If you interviewed both couples during those initial 5 years, you would find that their daily baseline happiness and life satisfaction levels were virtually identical. The Millers were not happier because they drove a financed $60,000 SUV. The Taylors were not miserable because they drove a dented, reliable hatchback. Human beings possess an incredible psychological feature called hedonic adaptation. We normalize our material conditions almost instantly. The extra spending the Millers took on did not buy them a single ounce of lasting, sustainable joy. It simply bought them a much higher floor for what it required to feel normal. When you spend your first 5 years chasing status signals, you aren't actually improving your life experience. You are simply expanding your lifestyle inflation loop. You are trading real, foundational long-term security for a temporary dopamine spike that evaporates the second the new car smell fades. The real difference between those two couples wasn't their emotional fulfillment in the moment, it was the invisible accumulation of optionality. One family was buying assets that created freedom, while the other was buying liabilities that created a lifetime of mandatory work. It does not matter where you find yourself on this timeline right now. The math we covered isn't a tool to make you feel guilty, it's a map to show you exactly how to play the board from where you are currently standing. Look at your current life stage and execute the single, clear action assigned to your bucket. If you are in your 20s or 30s, you are sitting on a goldmine of pure time. Stop waiting for a perfect economic climate or a flawless corporate plan before you take action. Your primary objective is to build a low-consumption wall around your identity. Keep your housing costs intentionally suppressed by finding a roommate, and decline the temptation to finance a new vehicle. Open a basic brokerage account tonight, set up an automatic monthly transfer of whatever small amount you can scrape together, and let the messy, early compounding engine begin. If you are entering the first 5-year window, you have a clean slate. Do not allow your new corporate salary to dictate your standard of living. Treat your first real paycheck exactly like your student budget. Divert every single dollar from your very first raise directly into investments before the cash ever touches your checking account. If you automate the gap between your income and your baseline expenses from day one, you will never have to rely on fleeting willpower to save. If you are mid-window or past the window, you might feel a sudden knot of financial panic or shame. Drop it. The absolute smartest move you can make right now is to stop trying to out-earn your past hesitation. Do not jump into risky, speculative investments to try and force a quick catch-up. Instead, run a merciless autopsy on your fixed costs. Downsize the vehicle, renegotiate your monthly liabilities, and artificially manufacture the financial margin you missed out on early. The past is gone. The only metric that matters now is the gap between what you bring in and what you keep. Start right where you are, completely before you feel ready. I want you to step away from the numbers for a second and look at a single morning 40 years from now. Picture yourself at age 70, sitting on a quiet front porch as the sun comes up. In the first version of that morning, you feel a heavy, familiar weight sitting right in the center of your chest. You are tired. Your body aches a little, but you are mentally reviewing your calendar because you have to go to work in an hour. You can't afford to miss a week, let alone retire. You spent 40 years chasing a lifestyle, upgrading your vehicles, and inflating your baseline to look successful to people you didn't even like. Now, the trap has closed. You are entirely out of time, your runway is gone, and you are trapped playing defense for the rest of your days. Now look at the second version of that same morning. You are sitting on that same porch, drinking your coffee in absolute, unhurried stillness. You don't have a calendar to check. You don't have a boss to answer to. Your time is entirely your own. You have a deep, unshakable sense of calm confidence because a massive, quiet investment engine is funding your life in the background. You aren't wealthy because you got lucky. You are wealthy because 40 years ago, you had the rare discipline to contain your lifestyle and start building your margin before you felt ready. Which version of your 70-year-old self you're creating depends almost entirely on what you do in the window. Not on luck. On decisions. Your first 5 years will decide everything.